Hi there, welcome to another edition of The Other Tom Green Show. And today, as we talk about modern media like podcasting, I want to reflect for a minute on what now has become an older form of media, and that's sports writing. As I've talked about, I grew up in New York City in an era where there were several newspapers published every day, and there was some great American sports writing always available to me. People like Red Smith and Dave Anderson, older men even before my time, Jimmy Cannon, they were just people you had to read every day. And to take you back even further, the U.S. Postal Service used to be important. They used to deliver things to you other than junk mail and bills. And one of the things they would deliver to me every Thursday or Friday would be the sporting news. And then Sports Illustrated would also show up, and you'd read columns from national writers. And for me, it was also exciting to read columns from writers from different parts of the country in the sporting news. I'd read what Bob Brogue had to say about what's going on in St. Louis, or Art Spander in San Francisco, and Furman Bisher down in Atlanta. And you would read their styles. You would read about those areas and how they saw things probably differently than New York. As you may have heard, sometimes in New York, people think that's the beginning and end of the world. All those men had one thing in common, of course. All those sports writers of that era, primarily through the 20th century, were white men. But as we now move into 2026, we look around and we see more people of color, more people of different genders writing about sports. It is an advancement that has changed sports. It has changed the way we consume sports. And we're going to get to talk about that with one of America's preeminent sports writers from right here in Colorado. Lindsay Jones is our guest today. So Lindsay is here, fresh back from the Super Bowl. I thank you for bringing in the Girl Scout cookies, too. We should note that, of course.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you for those. They'll be delicious. You, at the Super Bowl, primarily were covering the Patriots. You work now for The Ringer as a senior editor in the NFL. But you also had a unique role in that you were the pool reporter, which gave you unique access to the Patriots practice week. What'd you see? What'd you feel? And how do you report like that?
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for having
Great
me.
to
And
see you.
you said fresh after the Super Bowl. I don't know if fresh is fresh is exactly the word I
Survivor.
use right now. I survived. Yes, absolutely. I got back to Denver very, very late Monday night after basically pulling an all-nighter on Sunday, which I'm way too old. I'm way too old
Those
for
don't
this.
work anymore?
No, definitely not. So it was a pretty cool opportunity through the Pro Football Writers of America to be one of the two pool reporters. I was assigned to the AFC, and that was kind of predetermined. I live here in Denver. I was going to be at the AFC Championship game, and so it kind of just made sense that I would cover the AFC team no matter what happened. So when the Patriots won the AFC Championship game, I kind of started working with their PR team to figure out when their practices and everything were going to be. But basically, this is one reporter, and this happens every single Super Bowl. So
The
only reporter who gets to be there for the entirety of practice for the entire week. So that's Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then Saturday if they do a walkthrough, or in the Patriots case, all they did was a team picture. So I had to go write a couple hundred words off of team picture day. But yeah, they open the whole practice, and we as sports writers, as NFL writers, we don't get to watch full practices basically after training camp closes.
Right.
So it's a really interesting kind of access point. So you get to watch everything. I will say the Patriots were so really, really good to deal with. And I knew their PR team because just, over the years, it's the same guys in charge of that department that were there through all of the Belichick years and stuff. But everything else is new. Like, I didn't know Mike Vrabel very well.
Sure.
I'd kind of only done some group interviews and stuff with him over the years. But essentially, we kind of asked Vrabel after the first practice, like, hey, is there anything that, you really want to keep like off the record or whatever? And he was like, whatever you want.
But everything you did ultimately report was approved before it cleared.
Yeah, that is what's a little different and like feels a little like, you're independent media or whatever, but you have to like send your story to both the team and the league PR. for approval, which always feels a little.
If you're tipping something, or if they think you're
Yeah,
letting something out that
yeah.
they don't want out, they'll block
Yeah,
you.
and I'll say, so there was one day, and you can see all of the pool reports are on the Pro Football Writers of America's website. They also were published. I tweeted them all last week as well. But on Thursday, they did a bunch of teamwork. That was kind of their more intense day of practice. They were doing more like situational stuff, and they did a couple times through a 2-minute drill, and the offense was just really sloppy. And I described in my report initially, like some of the ways in which specifically they were sloppy. And they ended up pulling that out, which I understand, because I think you could pull out, like maybe you'd be missing some of the context, and maybe that would have gone viral about this specific, some plays and stuff that happened during the drill. But to their credit, they had no problem with me asking Mike Vrabel about, like, yeah, it looked like, there were a lot of mistakes from the offense in that drill. And they left, he had a pretty good quote about, like, we're going to have some issues on Sunday, mistakes are going to happen on Sunday. And the biggest thing is that you don't let one mistake become another. And they left all of that stuff in there. So to their credit, they were, I think they really understood the value of it. Kind of got to go wherever I wanted inside the stadium, which was kind of cool. The only time they have a security guy who was kind of giving me some grief.
From the league?
No, one of the Patriots security. Right. And so they practice inside Stanford Stadium. And at one point I was like, I need to go, like, I'm going to go check in the concourse and see if I can find a women's room. And I saw their security guy, like, had eyes on me and he came and, like, followed me. I was like, I was just in the concourse. I wasn't going to try to sneak practice.
I'm going to need
anywhere.
a minute in the women's room.
Yeah, I was like, hold on. I was like, you guys have, like, your locker rooms and stuff set up here, but, like, I need to find somewhere.
You'd done the pool reporting at a Super Bowl before.
Yeah, at the Eagles Chiefs Super Bowl a couple years ago, I was the Eagles pool reporter.
Because I wonder, are there legendary stories in pool reporting of some guy didn't show for practice, or some guy got seriously hurt and we couldn't report it, we had to eat it? Yeah,
I think there are. There's nothing right off the top of I'm trying to remember. Somebody was telling me a story this week about, when was it when the Raiders guy, like, went MIA? Oh yeah, the center, Barrett Robbins. Yeah, he disappeared. That's probably 20 years now. Yeah, that was early 2000s. But I don't remember if the pool reporter kind of knew about it. Generally what happens is you'll see, like, trick plays. Yeah. You'll see them installing specific packages, and then they run that. And and then you'll say, like, oh, I saw that. I knew what happened. And there was a little bit of that with the Eagles, where you could kind of see them do some, like, personnel packages. The thing that I remember from covering the Eagles that week that became notable to me is, like, something that I had as a pool reporter is they spent a lot of time really worried about the grass. Yeah. And the field, and, like, Nick Sirianni was kind of getting on the guys and the equipment guys about, like, figuring out what cleats they needed and changing stuff. And then sure enough, that Super Bowl, the grass ended up being, like, a major storyline. Yeah. And the Eagles seemed to be the team that was not prepared for it. Like, they didn't have the right ones, even though they had really spent all this time during one of the practices, like, kind of harping on their cleats and what the turf was going to be like. Be ready. Be ready for everything. It reminds me, of course, the Broncos had the famous Super Bowl with the Seahawks where they apparently weren't quite ready for crowd noise. Yeah. And that it seemed like the Patriots were concerned about crowd noise. Yeah, I mean, they definitely, even Bad Bunny. Yeah, well, they definitely practiced like they expected it to be a pro Seahawks crowd. Right. They didn't pipe in, like, the crowd noise, but they did have a lot of music going, and they turned it way, way, way up. Silent counts during when the Patriots offense was on the field, like, knowing they expected it to be loud and challenging for their offense. So the game plays out as it did. It was not a great football game to watch. Yeah. And Drake Maye, who almost won the MVP, played far from MVP football. Your column the next day was about Drake Maye and his post game, and having had access to the practices, it was a very insightful look at what went into that young man. Now, I contend that there were no other New England Patriots on offense who stood out. Their offensive line was a sieve. Their running backs got nothing done, and nobody was open. It was an all-around miserable day. And he, as the young man, gets to wear it. So it was an interesting day, because you think this guy really was. We did all the awards and all the stuff was being handed out that week, and he almost won the MVP. Yeah, I was actually really surprised how close the MVP voting was, though. I had gotten a sense from talking to other voters and stuff, and then obviously seeing the All-Pro results a couple weeks ago that I was pretty confident that Stafford was going to win, and I
Right.
thought he was going to win fairly comfortably. But it was the closest MVP race since it was split. So 20 something years ago, I guess, when it was the Steve McNair and was it Peyton?
It could be. I'm trying to
Oh,
recall.
man. But since the last time, since it was actually split, and that was a different voting process. That was when we could only vote for one.
Yeah.
So you would vote for one quarterback, and now we have this like ranked choice voting. So you vote 1 through 5, and there's points awarded and stuff. So, but Stafford only got one more first place vote.
We're going to have to
than
talk
Drake
about
did.
voting and the Hall of Fame
we'll get there.
in a
We
minute.
can, yeah, we can. It was a weird week. Let me
There's a lot there,
let me
all
tell ya.
involving New England
Yeah.
too. But let's stay with the football game. The Seattle Seahawks were the best team much of the year.
For sure.
Their closest competition was in the NFC and in the NFC West, really.
Yeah, I mean, really, the NFC. Those honestly, the two games between the Seahawks and the Rams in the regular season, and then the NFC Championship game. I think ultimately, when you look back on this season, like those were the games that defined this year
Yeah.
and decided this season. I also think you could maybe say that about the Broncos-Bills game in
Yeah.
the AFC being kind of like the true game that
A razor margin.
and then obviously with what happened to Bo
Yeah.
at the end of that game too, really kind of the game that just turned so much. Like I kind of wondered, what if the Bills had won that game?
Yeah, they
What
would
would
have
have happened to the Bills
They would have
in
been
the
a harder
Super Bowl?
out in the Super Bowl
For
if they
sure.
were able to
think
get
so
there.
too. Yeah, I mean, I think there were obviously a lot of weaknesses with this Bills roster and stuff that has been covered a lot since Sean McDermott got fired. But I think Josh Allen with that offensive line would have had a lot of answers that the Patriots did not.
With any other offensive line, the
Yeah.
Patriots had as poor an offensive line performance as I've seen in a Super Bowl in quite some time.
In a while, yeah. I mean, we kind of had like live advanced stats up in the press box while that game was going on, and was thinking a lot to the Chiefs Bucks Super Bowl
Right, where they
from a few
couldn't
years ago,
protect
where they just
Mahomes.
couldn't block. Yeah, they couldn't protect at all, and even I mean, that was kind of the story of last year's Super Bowl too,
Yeah.
but you just had a sense that like even though they were getting their butts kicked so bad, the Chiefs were, that like Mahomes would figure something out.
Figure
And
it
that
out.
I just never had a sense that the Patriots were gonna figure it out. They got it to 12, and you're like, well, maybe there's a game, maybe they can get a punt return or something.
Right.
And then that was when Drake threw a pick, and you said, well,
Ball game.
that'll do it.
You grew up in Colorado. You worked for the Denver Post. You still live here in the Denver area. The Broncos were this close to going to the
Yeah.
Super Bowl, but the iteration of the Broncos at that point with Jarrett Stidham and J.K. Dobbins maybe not playing probably would have put on a better show than the Patriots, but I don't think they could have played with the Seahawks.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Broncos defense, the Patriots defense, I think we should give them a lot of credit.
They hung around.
They played great throughout this entire postseason. Maybe bolstered a bit by the offenses that they faced along the way. Justin Herbert playing behind basically no offensive line, C.J. Stroud looking like he had maybe never
Forgotten how to play?
Yeah, I mean they were just really, really, really he was really frazzled in that game, and then obviously playing Stidham, making his first start in several years. So that probably helped their defensive numbers, but their defense played great in the Super Bowl. I don't think you
They
can
forced
take
field goals, if nothing else.
They did. They held them to field goals. They were being really aggressive. They were forcing Sam Darnold to throw into some really, really tight windows. I think the Broncos defense probably would have had a better shot.
Been better.
Like, I think they would have, just the way that they consistently bring pressure, the way that the secondary had been playing. I just think that would have been helpful. I don't know how much better an offensive performance the Broncos with Stidham would have been able to put forward. I think the plan probably would have been better from Sean. I think
Josh McDaniel didn't have a great day, but I mean, what are you supposed to do if you guys can't block anybody?
Yeah, I mean, it was tough. They really, even though they couldn't block anybody, they still really seemed committed to this like downfield passing game. And I don't think that would have been Sean Payton's plan, a Sean Payton Davis Webb plan. I think there would have been a lot of like really short, a lot of quick game, a lot of screen stuff, a lot of, like horizontal stuff, and not as much vertical, a couple deep shots maybe. But I think they would have been able to protect better. I mean, one of the strengths of this Broncos team for sure was their offensive line. So I think, in that case, maybe it would have been a little bit better of a matchup. But I think ultimately this was the Seahawks' year to win. And I think they did what they needed to do. Sam Darnold protected the ball well. They ran the ball well. Yeah.
The biggest surprise to me in all of this is the Super Bowl makes stars out of people. Sam Darnold seems like he doesn't necessarily have any need to be a star. He seems like he's a very aw shucks guy and always giving credit to everyone else. It's lovely. It's great. And so he may not achieve stardom. His story is a very interesting one. The invisible man to me remains Mike Macdonald. I don't think if Mike Macdonald walked into a room, most people would know who he is. And around the league, the respect for him has to be at the top now because he made that football team play the way they did. I just think it's funny that he's been able to stay a bit of a ghost.
A little bit, yeah. I mean, he doesn't have that like huge kind of personality. He's really well respected, really liked in his locker room. Does a really good job of like motivating his players internally. But yeah, you didn't really get to see a lot of his personality. And I'll be curious if he, obviously he's won a Super Bowl now, what that does to kind of raise his profile a bit. They're playing up in Seattle. They don't get quite the level of national media attention as you do playing, if you're in LA or New York or
Chicago,
even
Pittsburgh,
somewhere like that where, he's now into this like new tier of coaches. So I'll be curious to see kind of how much more attention they get. But yeah, he deserves so much credit for
even in the NFC West though, because everyone talks about Sean McVay. Everyone talks about Kyle Shanahan. These guys are these young geniuses, and they really are great coaches. It's clear. But he has won the Super Bowl. He's beaten those guys, and he's still like Mike Macdonald. Is he going to do ads for Pepsi?
Probably not.
Yeah.
Probably not. And yeah, it's got to be tough if you're Kyle Shanahan, I think, because he's made it to a couple Super Bowls he's been there as a coordinator. He's obviously been there as a head coach a couple times, have been really competitive in those Super Bowls and come up short. And then, Mike Macdonald, the Seahawks were really smart. They said, if this was mostly probably John Schneider, you're looking in the division that you play in, you're looking at these offenses, and then you see this guy, Mike Macdonald, who has this scheme that is almost specifically built as this, like, to counteract that. Like, he's figured out a way to beat that Shanahan-McVay scheme. And look, McVay's offense played great in those games.
They were close.
They were really close. They cooked them. Stafford was thrown for 400 yards and, the margins were that thin. Look, as
they are.
There was that fluky 2-point conversion that may have flipped the season, the end results of the season in that Thursday night game, the Rams-Seahawks game.
Charbonnet just picked it up casually, and
if the Rams had won that game and they were the team with home field advantage,
you could have drawn the exact same line for them instead of the Seahawks.
But you've got this guy now, but Macdonald has had an answer for Shanahan that Shanahan has not been able to solve that. Yeah, he was pretty funny on that. I don't know if you saw him on he was on he was on one of the pregame shows, ESPN's maybe,
right.
And kind of got asked about like, well, what do you do? What do you do about this Macdonald defense and how do you get the run game? And he was like, look, we haven't scored a touchdown against him. I don't know why you're asking me. Like, I clearly don't have the answer here.
Some of the significant residue of the Russell Wilson trade was also on display. Those draft picks that Seattle got, John Schneider, who does have a big personality. He does like being next to a microphone. But he not only made that trade to get those draft picks from Denver, but boy, has he drafted. He has really cashed in.
Yeah, and that's been, that's really how Seattle was able to turn the page as they did this really quick reset at the end of the Pete Carroll era, because it can be really hard to move forward from a coach who was as kind of all-powerful and just all... the entire
face of the franchise.
Yeah, entire culture of that team was built around Pete Carroll, and it can be really hard to move forward from that. Some teams it takes them a really long time. It took a really long time for the Broncos to kind of reset.
The Jets are still trying to recover from Weeb Eubank leaving in 1970 or whatever.
We've talked a lot about how kind of incredible the Patriots turnaround has been, resetting, but it took them a minute.
Yeah.
It took them a minute too. mostly getting past like the post Brady era, but then certainly moving on from.
I want to talk about the future of the AFC, the
Sure.
Broncos, and all that in a minute, but let's stay in Santa Clara because halftime obviously
Yeah.
became a big deal. The Bad Bunny show, there was
So
the
good.
Kid Rock counter programming, there was all that. And 128 million people are watching Bad Bunny on TV. You're at the stadium. It's a different view.
Very different.
All
Very
you
different
you
experience.
see
Yeah.
the show, can't hear the show, and it's beneath you like 100 yards away.
Yeah. So experiencing the halftime in the stadium is different depending on what stadium you're at.
Right.
At Levi's Stadium in Santa Clara, the press box is pretty high up. I was on kind of one end, probably at like the 20-yard line on this end, and really high up. So you get this bird's eye view, so you can like watch them setting up, and you like see these grass people coming on the field.
The
And I was
grass
like,
people.
what is going on? But it was kind of set up almost like a maze.
Yeah.
So you could see that on the broadcast how Bad Bunny would like make his way through, and they have all these different
Incredible
like
choreography,
little, like,
a lot of moving parts.
like small, these like small stages and stuff. Obviously, my favorite part was watching the grass people, the way that because they were not stationary.
Yeah.
As I'm sure everybody has now seen kind of the behind the scenes of the grass people. But as the staging would shift from different parts of the field, the grass people would like, and they would move them to like, so that was really fun. And actually a bunch of the grass people like got there at the same time we did. And I didn't know. They were, as we were getting off of the buses, and they were like, if you're media, go through this line. If you're wearing green, go through here. And I didn't realize like being green meant that you were part of the halftime show. I should have paid a little more close attention.
Does it have zero impact, or are you curious, like, what is this playing out like? Because obviously the entire world sees it differently than you do. They're watching it on TV.
Yeah, I mean, and it always is like a made-for-television halftime performance. Even the ones where you get to like hear it and there's a little bit better of a stadium experience, it's always all about the television performance. Unfortunately, in the box, we couldn't hear it very well, so I had my headphones in listening to the broadcast, which was on a delay. But you could kind of tell immediately, like, oh, this is good.
Yeah.
This is cool. But yeah, you couldn't really see it. I was getting a lot of texts from friends and people watching on TV being like, oh my God, is that Lady Gaga? I'm like, I think so. You can see her better than I can. I can't really tell. And like, I couldn't see from where our vantage point, you couldn't see all the like celebrities, like, in that part. I didn't see. I would have loved to get eyes on Pedro Pascal, but it was a little too high up in the up there to do that.
He
but
should have swung by the press box.
He
That would have
really,
been nice.
he really should have.
That would be a nice gesture on his part.
Yeah, that would have been great.
So the week at the Super Bowl, besides being a pool reporter, you've always been working with the Pro Football Writers of America, and that includes all those voting responsibilities. The Hall of Fame voting got tremendous buzz, all negative, I would say. I mean,
Yes.
I don't know of anybody who said that worked out really well. Maybe, I like Roger Craig. I think he belonged in the Hall of Fame. That's great. I tend to think most people who are up close to the Hall of Fame belong in the Hall of Fame. I'm an easier pass than most people. The Belichick and the Kraft votes got a lot of publicity. You're in the room. You're a voter. You can and can't talk about certain things that came with that. But describe for me what that was like.
Yeah, I was. So the news like leaked early, right? So we voted. I think now it is out there. We were not supposed to say initially when the meeting was, but we voted on January 13th. That was our day that we had the full. It was at least 8 hours. It was all on Zoom, but that was when we voted. So that's when there's the presentations, and then you have there's an accounting firm that does all the balloting. So you vote for the various, there's cut downs. And the first thing that happens is we have the head coach or the coaching finalists, the contributor finalists, and the 3 senior candidates are presented first.
Right.
So there's a formal presentation, a discussion afterwards for each of those 5 guys, and then you vote for 3. So essentially, the way that this works is they're like pitted against each other in this like zero-sum game. We're not giving an up-down, saying like yes or no on each candidate. You say, here's Bill Belichick, Robert Kraft, Elsie Greenwood, Ken Anderson, and Roger Craig, and you get to pick 3 of them. And it's so hard to compare.
Can you think, and this will maybe put you in a tough spot because of your role with PFWA, but is that Does that make sense? Is that like somebody thought that made sense when they
Yeah,
designed the system?
so it was 2 years ago. So it was before the class of 2025. So we've now had two classes where we had this voting system. Previously, the seniors were in their own like bucket and essentially got an up down vote.
With only one or two moving on?
So there would be, I think there would be two or three.
Okay.
Now I'm trying to remember. And I believe now I'm getting, if my timeline is right, was when Randy Gradishar
Yeah.
was in the senior pool, or was one of the senior finalists that year. And I mean, as somebody who I was so happy that Randy got in, he should feel really lucky, and we as like Broncos country should feel really lucky that he was a finalist the year that he was.
Yeah,
because they changed the voting procedure. And when I say they, it was the Hall of Fame board and their trustees. They decided, there was a lot of stuff. And actually Deion Sanders was the one who was like probably loudest about too many people are getting in. Too many people are getting into the Hall of Fame. It's too easy. It needs to be elite. And so there was, they did a lot of tweaking to the voting process and changed it. So, now the coach and the contributor are no longer in the pool with the modern candidates. They're now in the pool with the senior candidates. And so not only we're having to pick 3 out of that 5, they also have to get 80% of the vote. And there's 50, so they have to get 40 votes
out of 50.
So the threshold is really high. And the thing that so I was really surprised last year's class. So for the class of 2025, when Mike Holmgren didn't get in.
Yeah.
That was really, really shocking to me.
Because I do look at it, and I maybe I'm soft, but Belichick, Holmgren, Shanahan, and there are a couple others in there. They're all Hall of Fame coaches. And the idea that you have to strangle them through this tiny funnel and drip them out one at a time. I've always been, it's bothered me because I remember the Ring of Fame in Denver. The Broncos did it, and they waited and waited and waited. And when they finally put Red Miller in, he died.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, what? Why are you so
why do we have to wait so long?
Provincial about this? Let it happen. Recognize greatness and be good about it. And like I always tell people about baseball, like when Willie Mays was up, he wasn't unanimous. I'm like, oh, really? Yeah, there were a couple of guys who thought Willie wasn't quite good enough. Hank Aaron? No, not unanimous.
Yeah, and so I'll say, I mean, I think one of the things, the rules as Hall of Fame selectors, we're not allowed to say what goes on in the discussions. Mm-hmm. That's very much like, it's one of the key bylaws. I will just say that when we left that meeting, I knew it wasn't going to be unanimous for Belichick. I knew there were a couple of people that weren't going to vote for him, but I was stunned. I did not think that there was a large enough contingent there that he wouldn't get in. So when ESPN broke that news about 10 days before the Super Bowl that Belichick didn't get in, and that didn't come from us. And I will just say, we did not know. We do not know the results of the voting until we got an embargoed release a couple hours before the show on Thursday, the day that it was released. So we didn't know. So it was not coming from the voters. It probably came from people on Belichick's side because they find out that they didn't get in.
Sure.
And as much as the Hall does not want them publicizing that,
I don't know how
people who did
how I would revise the system, because that's complicated. I don't know if you have a plan.
Yeah.
But what about transparency as far as at least the vote? Would you think that's legitimate?
I think it could be helpful, but I don't know how much ultimately it would change stuff. I mean, I think I did end up writing a column where I said who I voted for.
Go ahead and say who you voted for.
I put out, okay, of course, now I need to make sure I have this correct. So out of the group of 5, because this is really the part that was the controversial part. So I voted for Bill Belichick, Robert Kraft, and Roger Craig was my 3 out of that 5. And I kind of explained, I mean, I didn't really give it a moment's thought about voting for Belichick. I get there, like there was a discussion about Spygate, and I understand that some of my fellow voters had some concerns about that. I don't think that's enough to warrant him not being a first ballot Hall of Famer. So that was a very easy click for me. And then you kind of have to weigh all the senior candidates and Robert Kraft. And ultimately, I think I know there's people who are like, the bar should be so, so, so high for like an owner to get into the Hall of Fame. As a voting body, and this was before this was my 5th year that I've been a selector. But as a voting body, we've put in Jerry Jones, we put in Pat Bolin, who I think was extremely, extremely deserving, and I wish it would have happened sooner for him. So that it's something that he could have experienced, because I think he deserved it. So we've clearly set a precedent of what it means to be a Hall of Fame caliber owner, and Robert Kraft checks all of those boxes.
Right.
If we've decided that this is what it means, and if we're going to make it possible for owners to be in the Hall of Fame, then Robert Kraft very much deserves to be there with the other owners that we've put in. And then Roger Craig, to me, out of the senior pool, he felt to me as the one who I was like, what do you mean he's not in already?
Yeah, exactly.
And that's, I don't want that to be as a slight to Ken Anderson or Elsie Greenwood, but to me, Roger Craig very clearly was like a tier above.
Yeah.
From that pool.
I think that's the problem. You start to debate, people always say Magic or Bird, and you say, oh, Magic. And people go, what, do you hate Larry Bird? And it's like, no, he's really, I would take him too.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not either or in a good, bad way. You mentioned the owners, and I should point out your column does detail the work you put into voting, the amount of effort, the interviews, you talk to players, you talk to coaches, you do as much research as anyone. Owners also had a bit of the spotlight this week because of the Epstein files.
Sure.
And you brought that up at the Commissioner's News Conference, the Commissioner's News Conference is always irritating to me because he never
says anything. He's great. It's why it's like one of his best attributes if you're an owner is that he's the one who sits up there to answer all the questions, but he manages to not really say anything.
No, and it's managed down.
Well, and it used to be they would end Super Bowl week with the commissioner's press conference. It used to be on Friday morning because there was nothing else going on. So it was like the culmination. It was like the state of the NFL. Sometimes they would have the head coaches would do a little thing too. And then at some point they moved it to the middle of the week. So it was kind of in the middle of everything was happening. And then a few years ago, I don't remember, it was post-COVID, they moved it to Monday and they made it like a invite only press conference. And when they did that at first, there was a lot of pushback from journalists because it was like, oh, you're eliminating who can be there and you're just trying to avoid the serious questions. To the NFL's credit, that hasn't happened.
Yeah.
I think they've, by making it a smaller pool, it used to just be that if you had a media credential for the week, you could show up and it's a free for all. And you ended up getting like, hi, it's, Joe Brown from Cleveland, and can you tell me what you think about the Brown Stadium plan or whatever? So you get these like very specific local. You would get a lot of the, we always joke the Play 60 kid who'll come in.
Yeah.
And the Play 60 kid was still here, but you would get like a lot of those.
Right.
So you would get kind of.
There goes 15 of my or 60 minutes.
Yeah. So now, at least to their credit, like they are bringing basically like people who are going to ask like. They get a lot of hard questions. I mean, he got a lot of questions about the lack of diversity in the head coaching hiring this year. He got a number of questions about Steve Tisch and the Epstein files. He got asked some questions about like business, media rights deals.
He did get all those questions and said nothing.
Said nothing. And I asked, and so it's always so funny. This is like the behind the. We take a bus there, so it's all the reporters, and we sit there. We're all competitors. We all work for different outlets, but we're like, we have to make sure like these are all the topics that have to get hit. And so there's kind of like there is a little bit of a teamwork that goes on. You obviously we have our own priorities. I know people who had their own stories in progress who you want to ask, but there's also a sense of like we as a body, as like the media body, will have failed if we get through this press conference and he didn't get asked about X, Y, and Z. And so like I had kind of my list of topics, and then all of a sudden they don't really give you a lot of warning. You get in a queue kind of. I'm like, I need a question or whatever. Yeah. And you didn't even get that. They'll just be like, and up next, it's Lindsay Jones from The Ringer. And I'm like, okay, what do I have? So
you also have to pay attention to what else has been done. And in two ways. One, I think sometimes like when I do a chat with you and you're doing your podcast on The Ringer is you better listen to who you're talking to because they may have brought something up that you were like going, really, I'd like to know more about that.
And so sometimes, and then sometimes you won't get a follow-up, and so you have to kind of structure your question in a way that you can get multiple parts in. So I ended up asking about ICE at the Super Bowl and the political messaging in the potential political messaging coming from the halftime and pregame performances. He didn't say anything really at all. And actually what he said about, I think it was about Bad Bunny in particular, was that he expected their performance to be like a unifying message. And ultimately that's what Bad Bunny.
That was the intent.
That's really what
how it was received depends on where you live.
For sure. But yeah, so I asked about ICE presence at the Super Bowl when it got to be my turn.
So now we turn the page, and I would think that the Super Bowl being over, you've survived another Super Bowl.
Survived, yes.
And now you get to relax until training camp, right?
Yeah, totally. I'm just off. I'm going to log off of Slack.
That's great.
Yeah, I'm going to go on vacation. No, that's not how the NFL calendar works. If anything, it kind of ramps up a bit. This week is a little low key. We can kind of all catch our breath a little bit, but the combine is in 2 weeks. The NFL combine, free agency.
Are you going to run against Rich Eisen?
I'm not. And I actually, since I moved into like an editor or managerial role a couple years ago, I haven't been going to the combine, which has been kind of nice for my family.
Yeah.
I don't have to, because it's really hard. You go to the Super Bowl for 8 or 9 people are going to.
Nobody
feels bad about like having to go to the Super Bowl, but it is a long trip. I was gone 9 nights.
It's not a sleeping trip either. You're working all the time.
I know my daughter kept, I wish I was there with you. And I was like, kid, I wish you were here. I miss you, but like you do not wish you were here. Trust me. Like it's not, there are fun stuff. Like I did go to I only went to one party this year, but I went to the Spotify FanDuel party where it was Green Day and Counting Crows. And that was really fun. It's a nice little like
pretty cool
perk you get at the end of the week. But yeah, the combine is a grueling, event to cover. Really long days, early mornings.
A lot of interviews. Coaches and
a lot of interviews. And then so much of the it's just like the extracurricular networking. So you feel if you're a reporter who covers the league, like you feel like you have to be out because that's where the sources are. And you get good stuff from the podiums in the morning, but you really get stuff from hanging out and chatting with people,
being around, being out, present.
Yeah. And you kind of get a sense of okay, that the Broncos people like to be at this is their place that they hang out, and this is their team hotel, or Sean Payton likes to go to Prime 47. So if I cover the Broncos, I got to be hanging out
Got to be around there.
So it's a grind.
The combine,
for sure.
Free agency, the draft, and here we go.
Really the only kind of downtime in the NFL schedule is late June to mid-July.
Okay.
So if you ask anybody who works around the NFL, oh, when's your wedding anniversary? Chances are it's sometime
June
within
28th.
Yeah, between June 28th and July 20th. That's kind of the window, and it's quiet. But other than that, it's real go. News is happening now. All the coaches have been hired now that Clint Kubiak is formerly in place in Las Vegas. So we're full speed into draft and free agency now.
So if you're the Broncos, you and the Patriots are in a similar spot. You're there now. You've kind of entered the chat. You still have the Bills. You still have the Chiefs. You still have the Ravens. All these teams that underperformed or didn't finish their years very well. They're still going to be there next year. What do you see the Broncos doing in the offseason? Because they are now in that 1 year where Russell's contract is gone and Bo's still on the rookie contract. They have money to spend and confidence from what they did this past year.
Yeah, I think so. And then the other part I think that's really intriguing looking forward for the Broncos now is I think they're going to be a destination. I think this is once free agency starts. And look, free agency is not the way to build your team. The free agent pool is every year it's not that great. We're working on kind of re-upping our top 40 free agent list of the year, and it's not the way to do it. But if you're a team that has money to spend and you already have a really good roster, you can really fill some nice holes.
Finish the project.
Yeah, for as much time as we spent in Broncos media land talking about a joker and a tight end and a playmaking, getting other playmakers, I think that was very clear.
Yeah.
It seems very clear what this team still needs, and that's some more truly difference making offensive skill position talent. I think wide receiver should be like very much a priority position, whether that's free agency or the draft. Now I'm trying to remember exactly who the wide receiver free agent class. It's not great.
No, and it's always tricky when you spend money in those positions because you can hit or miss, and you still have to scheme it. Your quarterback still has to like it.
Yeah.
It all has to fit. But I thought that contrast between the AFC Championship game and the NFC Championship game, where all of a sudden you saw Puka Nacua and Jackson Smith and Jigba and Kyron Williams and Kenneth Walker, and you're going, we didn't see anybody like that 3 hours ago in the snow in Denver.
Yeah, for sure. The Broncos didn't have it. The Bills certainly didn't have that sort of talent. The Patriots absolutely don't have that sort of, and that was very much exposed during the Super Bowl, that they didn't have that level of of offensive talent. I think the Broncos are probably, I would take like the Broncos receiving group against the Patriots or the Bills as they stood in 2025.
If healthy.
Sure. Yeah, and that was tough. I mean, to just see
Pat Bryant
getting hurt. Troy Franklin was getting hurt. Marvin Mims was kind of in and out, where there was a point, I think it was during the AFC Championship game, right, where it was like, or it might have been the Bills game, where it was like, we're getting real close to like not having receivers available. Because I remember Steve Smith, the longtime Panthers receiver, was in the press box. And like kind of looking around and being like, I think he's actually the best receiver in the building right now, period. Like could actually probably play better than anybody else that's there right now. So yeah, I'd be very curious to see kind of how the Broncos are going to spend their money. I expect that they will. They've been a very aggressive team in free agency over the last couple of years, even with the cap constraints that they had from the Russell Wilson contract. How are they going to fill those holes though? Like what are they going to prioritize? Because right now the window's open. You got to do everything you can to help Bo.
And people, I think, want to make a question mark about Bo and his ankle. And I think until we know there's a problem, I don't want to.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there. I mean, that was the weirdness with the dueling press conferences after.
That was weird.
It was very weird. I don't want to presume anything, but they're both very fiery individuals, and I could see Bo being like, "What the heck, man?" I think Davis Webb coming back is huge.
Yeah,
that was like.
Well, that'll be the interesting thing now is what Sean Payton isn't going to let go of as far as calling plays. Does he see Davis Webb as a great play caller? He probably evaluates Davis Webb as this or that and says if he's a really good play caller, he should call the plays. But I mean, the idea of Sean letting go doesn't strike me as something that is his thing.
No. No.
He's a control guy.
Yes, he's very much a control guy. So it's going to be a really interesting offseason. But yeah, I mean, I think if you're the Broncos, if you're Broncos fans, I think you should be feeling pretty good.
Yeah. Better than you have in the last 10 years.
Yeah. Although I don't want, I've probably been more critical of Bo and the offense than a lot of folks have. At least that's what the people in my Twitter mentions like to tell me a lot. And I think he did a lot of things well this year. I do think there's a lot of growth that still needs to happen, both from him, just the way he handles the feel in the pocket and how quickly he wants to
settling down a little bit.
Yes, a lot of that, some of that stuff, the touch on those deep passes, just some of those things that cost this team in some moments.
He's not a young man, but he's a young pro.
Yeah. It's like if you can just kind of harness some of that, like that late game magic, because he very clearly has it.
Yeah.
I think he's got the personality. He's got that clutch gene that we haven't seen in a Broncos quarterback in a very, very, very long time. But I don't want like a couple of those fourth quarter comebacks or like how well they played at the very end of that Buffalo game to just like overshadow some of the concerns that we saw.
The earlier parts of games in general.
Because we never saw him like because of the timing of the ankle injury, like we never had that like really disappointing end moment where like, oh, okay.
It was the shocking after the game end with the Sean Payton presser.
Yeah, we're not having the same conversation about him that we had that we're having about Drake Maye right now, who by all accounts had a significantly better season than Bo did.
Right.
But because of the way it ended, he had that kind of really bad moment in the playoffs.
The last thing on his resume.
Yeah, and the last thing on Bo's resume is
We won.
phenomenal fourth quarter comeback against
to
Buffalo, the most exciting, and then the devastation of the ankle injury. So this is going to be huge. It's going to be a huge offseason, I think, for him personally, recovering from the ankle injury and then really taking a hard look at where he can get better and how he can get better. And I think having Davis Webb still is his, maybe now even having more power as his like coordinator now,
and
not
who
just
his
his
choice
QB
are.
coach.
Who's around him on the weapons
And I think
side.
Davis does I think he's personality wise, he's very different from Sean Payton.
Yeah.
And I think having him in that room and kind of in that
makes it work.
I think it's going to
or helps it work.
helps make it work.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be really important. And keeping Vance Joseph was huge too.
Yeah.
I mean, this is what happens to good teams, right? You start to get that like brain drain and people come and raid your staff. And I haven't spoken to Vance about this, so I don't know if he emerges from this job cycle being disappointed that he didn't get a head job this year. I'm glad he didn't take one of the bad jobs.
Yeah, there's some toxic jobs that can end your
with,
career. You go to coach Arizona or something, and you're still 5 years away.
And that's the one that he was linked to a lot because he had been there and he knows the Bidwells and stuff. But I was like, it's really hard to get that second opportunity.
Yeah.
And don't go to a place where you're being set up to fail.
Go 7-10 and wash out.
Yeah, and I was thinking that with Davis Webb too.
Yeah.
Of like, if your choice right now is to take the Cleveland, I mean, I don't know how much he was in the mix for the Browns job, but like the Browns job or even the Raiders job.
Raiders job has some upside.
There's some upside, but it is not a stable. That is not a stable place by any means. So it's like, take a good job. If you can afford to stay in the job that you're in, if you're in a really good coordinator
spot. The Buffalo
spot,
job would have been an exciting window for anyone.
For sure.
With that quarterback and that fan base, you could step in.
For sure. But some of these other jobs, like if Vance Joseph can keep this Broncos defense on the track that it's been on, I hope that would set him up to have better offers in the future, that he doesn't have to go somewhere.
A better cycle, maybe.
Yeah, better ownership. I mean, I think that's one of the biggest lessons to me, not just from this cycle, but from kind of year after year of covering ownership and coaching jobs. There's a reason that the same jobs are open every couple of years.
Yeah. Take the Jets job and, you'll be done in a year and a half. And
it's like ownership quarterback is important. But if you're like a head coach, there's almost nothing more important than who owns the team and how do they
how they operate the whole thing.
How the whole operation runs.
You grew up in northern Colorado,
yes.
So did
Fort
you?
Collins.
Yeah, did you Fort Collins, Lass? Did you? Were you a Bronco fan? Were you a sports fan?
Oh yeah. So I grew up in Fort Collins, where like probably I was born in 1981, so like John Elway was just like a constant presence in my childhood and in my adolescence. The Broncos went to a lot of Super Bowls when I was in elementary school and didn't go so great. But I remember my parents hosting Super Bowl parties. I remember one year where they had everybody had paper bags over their heads. I do remember the 49ers Super Bowl after like the two previous losses. My parents said we're going skiing, and so we went to Keystone. And I remember my dad like turning on KOA when we were on our way home, and it was like, and then he turned it off. He was like, okay,
that went as expected.
But the Broncos won their Super Bowls my junior and senior year of high school.
So
that was a pretty great. That was really fun. Skipped school to drive down to Denver and go to a parade.
Go to parades. Were you destined to be a sports writer? Did you have did you see that in your future as a young lady?
Not necessarily. It wasn't. I wasn't like, this is absolutely what I'm going to do. I always was a voracious reader. I consumed a lot of sports media and a lot of media in general. Yeah, we had we subscribed to multiple newspapers, the Coloradan and Fort Collins, and also. We kind of went back and forth between the Post and the Rocky as I was growing up. But I read Woody Page and Bob Kravitz and, just read a lot, would read newspapers a lot.
I see Dick Connor's name used so much by the Pro Football Writers of America.
Yeah, he's named after for our writing awards, which is pretty cool. And then we always just watched a lot of sports. Have really vivid, clear memories of watching a lot of football with my dad. And then once I got a little older, watching with my high school friends. But so I always loved journalism. I worked for my newspaper at Fort Collins High School, Spilled Ink.
Spilled Ink.
It was called
Go
Spilled
Lambkins.
Ink. Yeah, go Lambkins. And it was a really good high school newspaper.
Right.
Like we took it really, really seriously. Like we would win writing awards and go to convention, conferences and that kind of stuff.
CSU was a good journalism school,
Yeah.
but you wanted to go elsewhere?
Yeah,
or-
I was like, growing up kind of in the college town. I wanted to go to a little bit smaller school. So I went to Emory University in Atlanta, knowing that I wanted to study journalism, but it wasn't like I'm going to be a sports journalist.
Right.
And so I actually majored in political science. And the way that Emory at the time, this is no longer the case, but at Emory in the late 90s and early 2000s, you could do a double major in journalism, but you couldn't do a solo major. So you had to, it was considered a co-major. So I was a political science major, and then I also got a double major in journalism, worked for the campus newspaper, the Emory Wheel. So I covered, it's a D3 school, no football.
But you're in Atlanta.
But I was in Atlanta. But I covered my first semester, my freshman year. I was on the men's soccer beat. And then I covered women's basketball, and I became a sports editor at the paper. And
So this is when it's happening. You're now becoming.
I was kind of getting into it. And look, yes, when you're covering like the Super Bowl, the stage is really big, but the actual like mechanics of like writing about sports is the same, whether it's high school football or the Broncos. It's just like the level of fame kind of, or the stakes of the people that you're writing about. Although I covered, so my first job out of college, I worked at the Palm Beach Post. I was actually I was a news reporter. I covered K through 12 education, cops, crime. I'd go to court.
Did you like that?
I did.
Did you like seeing your name in the paper?
I did. I loved seeing my name in the paper. Look, being in South Florida as a reporter was like a dream. There was just the weirdest stuff happens.
Florida man.
Yeah. I think it was, I'm trying to remember if I was an intern. It might have, if it was during my internship or shortly after my internship. We had to write about Vanilla Ice had like a ranch, and his animals, had exotic animals, and they got loose. This is like a Mad Libs, right? Like a wallaby and a goat owned by Vanilla Ice were running down Highway 50. Just like
you
the
could make
weirdest,
it up. Yeah.
The weirdest stuff. But you learn how to being a news reporter, you learn how to just do the on the ground, hard reporting. And, we had to do like jail checks essentially. So it'd be like, sometimes you could do it online, but I would drive my butt all the way to the jail in St. Lucie County. And you go through the logs and you just are like, who's here? Flipping through. And then you'd be like, oh, suspected first-degree murder charge. So you write that one down, and then you got to call and figure out.
Go backwards.
What happens. Yeah. So, it was really good, just like on the ground reporting experience. But then I switched over to the sports department at the Palm Beach Post to cover high school football in South Florida.
Big.
Just incredible.
Yeah.
Really. So that was really how I learned how to cover football.
So the Palm Beach Post to the Denver Post to USA Today, and it made me think of Vicki Michaelis.
Yeah.
I looked up, and Vicki was.
Yeah, I basically just looked at her life plan and said, I'll do that. Thanks.
She was. I knew her. She was covering the Nuggets here in town, but she was a terrific sports writer, and there weren't many female sports writers at the time. But she now has an interesting group that she's run for quite a while.
Yeah, so she's at the University of Georgia running their sports journalism program there.
The Grady School?
The Grady School of Journalism. Yeah. It's probably not the official title, so sorry, Vicki. But just doing a really incredible job, educating the next generation of sports journalists. She's been an incredible mentor and friend to me.
Did you find any roadblocks that were different for you because as a woman?
I think I'm probably lucky that I was a generation, maybe one generation removed from really having doors shut.
Like the Melissa Ludke's and the stories that preceded you.
Yeah, there was enough, I was never the first woman on my staff. A lot of times I was the only woman.
Yeah.
There were probably times that I was maybe the first, for the high school kids especially that I was covering, that maybe I was the first woman that they had talked to about sports or about football, but I was never the first. I think it was, in some ways, it was
Yeah.
maybe a little easier. I mean, it's not to say it was ever like easy.
See, I think like Dorothy Mock was before your time, but she was the first full-time sports writer hired at the Denver Post in the mid-'60s. But I got the feeling the assignment when women were hired to be sports writers in the early era, it was to write sports for women
Yeah.
as opposed to just do the job.
Yeah, and I think there's, probably during kind of my era, there has been this idea of like, if you're a woman, you need to write about women's sports, or women's sports can only be covered by women, and that like the men in our departments would be like, well, that's a woman's story. I mean, I definitely felt there were times at a lot of the places that I've worked where it was like, especially when it was off-field issues, when it was stuff about players who were being arrested for domestic violence, issues that had to do with domestic violence or sexual abuse, or like a lot of, and even sometimes then like the flip side of that is like the personality features or like writing about their families and stuff. I was like, oh, well, that's, you got to write about that. And so I remember in 2014, when that was the big year with the Ray Rice.
Yes.
When Ray Rice hit, I was at USA Today at the time, and it very much became like, this is Lindsay's story. Like, you're the woman, you need to write about like how the NFL cares about women.
And they said it like that?
No, it just felt,
it
just kind of felt that way. And I don't, and look, it was a big story, and it was probably really big for my career, just in terms of like the sourcing and the networking and the reporting that I was able to do from that on like a league level. Like, I mean, there was a point, I mean, honestly, there probably still is a point that like, there's probably only a handful of reporters in the league who cover the NFL that like have a deep understanding of the personal conduct policy and like the history of how the league disciplines players and stuff more than I do, because of the work that I did certainly then, but then over the last 10 years, it's something we've kind of kept up. And it's something that I've tried to be cognizant about over the years too, now that I'm in an editor role, of like, I'm not just going to assign the column about like Deshaun Watson to the woman on our staff.
Right.
Like, the men on our staff should be caring about this stuff too.
Exactly.
And should be involved in this too. And like, I look now at women's sports is good business.
It's
not
booming.
So if you're if you're a young man who wants to write about sports and you're interested and you're looking for a spot, like it's a good career decision.
You look at the PWHL, the Denver Summit, and soccer here. I think the women's soccer team here may already be past the Rapids as far as interest, popularity.
I mean, if you're a 25-year-old dude living in this market and you want to find a niche and a fan base, people who are going to follow you, get in now.
So I want to ask you about that though, because when you went from after the Post to USA Today, then The Athletic, which is kind of a new form, a more digital form of what became the New York Times sports section, and then The Ringer. And The Ringer is very new.
I've been all over the place, Tom.
Right, but you're also evolving.
Yeah.
Like for me, I've gone into podcasting, but I was always in traditional forms of media, radio and television. And you're moving with the times and doing so comfortably.
Although I would say, like, going to The Athletic, it was new when I went there in 2018. So The Athletic launched in 2016. I went there in 2018. It was new in that it was a subscription model, and the numbers that we cared about most was subscriptions, as like, that's kind of what we were measured by. But when it came to the journalism, it was very still like old school.
Yes.
Like, we weren't, necessarily trying to like do new styles of writing. It was very much like, we want to have that really old school storytelling,
be the place for it.
We just kind of did it. It was just in a different like distribution model. And now, I mean, you look at the way that the business is going, the Athletic is really not the only place, but in many ways it feels like the only place that is doing that like really deep, comprehensive.
So you're at the
journalism.
Super Bowl where the world of sports gathers, especially football, and the Washington Post basically sacks the entire sports department.
Yeah, it was awful.
And that's not, to take anything away from the other newspapers in America, but that's the sports section.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and my colleague at The Ringer, Brian Curtis, wrote about this, and on his podcast, The Press Box, talked about this a bit last week. We want to have a lot of nostalgia about like the Sally Jenkins era, the like what the Post sports department was
Yeah,
in
who
like
was
the
there?
80s and
Everyone was there,
90s.
it seemed
But
like.
not today, 2 weeks ago, I would say probably the best sports department in the country, and the people who are working there now, just in terms of like the quality of writers and reporters that they had, the type of stories that they would pursue, the impact of the journalism that they did. I would, I obviously read The Athletic a lot, but if you're thinking of like a newspaper and the way that they cover their sports locally, the
Yep.
way that they cover the high schools in the DMV, the way that they cover, their colleges there, but then the way that they and this is what I think ultimately this was maybe their undoing a bit from a management side was, who are you? Like, what is our identity? What do we want to do? Do we want to be
Yeah.
a local sports section, or are we going to be this kind of like
What's our direction?
national brand and trying to figure out how you evolve kind of in real time? But their beat writers that cover the Nationals and the Commanders are as good as anybody in the country, and their like investigative team and their
Yeah. I
kind of
think
features and enterprise writers, and it's just gone. Like at least when the New York Times folded their sports department, which was shocking when
yes.
that happened a few years ago, it wasn't like mass layoffs. Their reporters, their sports reporters were like distributed to the rest of their staff, and a lot of those people are still doing really, really good work covering sports. It's just not like in the sports pages. But they also paid $500 million to buy The Athletic.
Yeah.
So like they're doing more sports than they ever had before. The Washington Post has just given up.
And well,
They're just not doing it, which is just,
the owner is famous and the owner is wealthy beyond belief. It's not
yeah.
like he could have done it without, kept
Yeah,
it going
well,
for forever without ever noticing it on his bottom
well,
line.
and this is not this certainly isn't just like a sports note or whatever, but everything doesn't it's going to sound super like, I don't know, blue progressive, whatever it is, but like everything doesn't have to be this massive money making.
Yeah.
Like the business of journalism isn't just to like
Bit of a public
rake in
trust.
cash.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, why journalism exists is to like, it is a public service, and it's hard to make money that way. And, I think it's been a failure of a lot of these media companies that they didn't find a way to at least be sustainable with the evolving technology. But just looking at like, oh, well, your sports department, we're not making money. It's like, but what, you're losing this tremendous public service. And like, it's just shocking to me that the way that they've cut the local part too.
And I'm
But
sure for you too, it's also like, I don't personally know, I don't think anyone on the staff, you do.
yeah,
These are your friends. These are your colleagues.
yeah. And I mean, I think the Washington Post only had a couple people at the Super Bowl this year. Normally they would have a lot. I think partially that was because of the Olympics and partially because they kind of knew this was coming. But they had, their like long time national NFL reporter, a guy named Mark Maskey, was there. And I saw him at the AFC Championship game, and he's like, I guess I'm going to the Super Bowl and we'll find out. And he was there. He asked, I think, the first question at the commissioner's press conference on Monday, and was still writing stories for the Washington Post. And I didn't actually, I'm trying to remember if I saw him at the game. I'm trying to remember if he stayed. But then they had another one of their enterprise writers was there, a guy named Adam Kilgore, who is incredible. And I saw him Wednesday morning, which was the day that all the stuff broke. I mean, early, like 6:15 in the morning, because he was going to catch the buses to go to the Patriots availability.
It's
just like
9:15
I
on the
was.
East Coast, so the
And
email's out.
the emails were out, and he was one of 3 people on their staff that kept their jobs. And it was just this like, what?
All my friends.
All my friends. Yeah. I mean, it was just
Yeah.
this like stunning. And they have a bunch of people over in Italy right now who everything was booked. I mean, like, look, our Super Bowl trips, we had to pay for our hotels, I think like January 15th or January 20th or something. So this was all paid for, but they just kind of killed these trips in the middle.
It's been really hard to watch, and I love talking about journalism with you because it's something that's always been important to me, whether it's reading it or participating in it, but always respecting it. And this was a bad week, and I don't, there have been bad weeks before, but this was a bad week.
And it just felt like, I mean, it's an institution,
Yeah.
and it's it's like this really large scale example of what's been happening
Yeah.
around the country. And
Well, we're seeing it in television locally in
Yeah, and
Denver with the potential mergers
For
and
sure.
all that kind of stuff that's
yeah, I mean, remember,
very wary.
like, do you remember how shocking it was when the Rocky closed
Yeah.
in 2009?
No, I
And
miss
just
it.
being
I miss it
like,
every day because it made the Post better.
Oh, 100%.
And
Yeah. And that was when I was brand new. I started here. I moved here in 2008, or moved to Denver in 2008. So I had 1 year, like the last year of the, like the
of the
newspaper
war.
wars. And yeah, just like, we all respected each other, but like we all, just what is the Rocky going to have, and the timing of
Waking up
trying
every
to
morning
publish
fearing
your
the paper.
stories. Yeah. Trying to publish. Yeah. You try to, if you had a scoop, and this was, you could do this in 2008. You cannot do this now. Like if you had a scoop, we would wait, but you didn't want to necessarily wait till the morning paper, but you would wait and publish it at like 10:30.
Yeah.
Because then, or like right around at 10, because
Just
then
past them.
so the Rocky it was too late for the Rocky to chase it and to get anything to their paper. And the like 9 News or Channel 7 or whatever would have to cite you. They'd be like, and the Denver Post has this big report
It's just
tonight.
reported,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's just reported. So they didn't have it, so they'd have to cite you too. So all these like games you play where you can't do that anymore.
Besides Girl Scout cookies, what do you want to pitch? Just you with the
Oh,
ringer.
sure. Yeah. Well, obviously Girl Scout cookies. We will deliver.
Thanks, Lena.
Yes, from my daughter, who is she's a junior Girl Scout, 4th grade, and is actively trying to make her reach some cookie goals. Tom bought some last week, so I delivered. And we will deliver to you too, if you'd like. Or they ship anywhere in the country. But yeah, so the Ringer, it's a really fun place to work.
Was it fun to watch Simmons take a beating?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, it was very interesting. I didn't tune in live to his pod because I was, on deadline and myself in the press box. But yeah, I'm guessing more people probably tuned in to the Simmons show
gloat.
because the Patriots lost than they would have had they won.
Well, he's on to the Celtics now
Yep. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, Jason Tatum I think is like on his way back, which is kind of
in
wild.
the G League.
But yeah, we've got a lot of pods. We're very much moving into draft mode. Our draft guide just launched. We've got the Todd McShay show. Yeah, and now just trying to plan out our like off-season content,
Well,
free agency content at theringer.com. And
I hope you enjoy your 3 days off, June 29th, 30th,
I know.
and July
I will say
1st.
I am taking PTO next week, just to like get caught up. I'm going to deep clean my house.
So
and,
that's one last thing. I don't want to gloss this over. The difference between men sports writers and female sports writers sometimes is motherhood.
yeah,
And
for sure.
I mean, you have a 9-year-old girl
Yeah.
who requires 100% of your attention.
Yeah.
And I don't, like I see Nick Kosmider spends a lot of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
He's a great dad and all this stuff. But it's different for women.
Yeah, I mean, and it's funny because I've like multiple group chats with journalists around the country, but a couple of them are like, some fellow moms, and one of my, I don't think she would mind me saying, but one of my friends she's in Italy right now covering the Olympics, and was texting yesterday because she was feeling so bad because her son, she's 2 little boys, and one of her little boys had 104-degree fever, and it wasn't like, my husband can't handle it because like he can't, and it was, we
Right.
kept saying, we're like, they're gonna be okay. John's, he's got this, you're okay. But you just can't get over that feeling of like,
I want to be there
I'm
so
in Italy
bad.
and like, your kid just wants to,
Yeah.
there's, as a mom.
It's a big difference.
But yeah, I mean, I traveled a lot when Lena was a baby, when I was still at USA Today, and I went back and I did a lot of traveling. And those years, it was really hard. I felt it was really hard on me. Like it was harder for me to be gone. She was so well taken care of at home. My husband does an amazing job. We've got grandparents all local that were able to help. But then as she got older, I saw it being harder on her when I was gone.
But now look
so
at her.
I
She's
reined it way back in. Yeah, I was gone 9 nights. That was like the max. Like she was right. And she was she's going to gymnastics and swimming and band and all that stuff. But it was like, it was time for mom to be.
Well, I'm glad you're back.
Mom to be home.
I'm glad you're back.
Thank
with
you.
Lena and everything. And I really appreciate you taking the time
For
joining
sure.
me here
I always
today.
love to talk journalism and
Thank you.
football and stuff. So yeah,
Well,
thanks for
we'll
having
see
me.
you again soon.
For sure.
Big thanks to Lindsay Jones from The Ringer for joining us today. And all I want to do is remind you, the great taste of Samoa's, good and good for you. That is going to do it for this week's edition of The Other Tom Green Show. As always, we'd love to hear from you here at guerrillasports.net, and we look forward to seeing you back here again next week.